Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to NEWSROOM. I'm your host, Khalid. It's a Monday. It's the 27th of February 2023, and this is what we will be discussing during the course of the show. Our first story of the day is the 4th anniversary of Operation Swift Retort. We all remember what happened 4 years back. We all remember how Pakistan retaliated and the way it retaliated to show not only our so-called enemy and not so friendly neighbor India that Pakistan has all the capacity to thwart any such attempt against its nation or against its land. This is what Operation Swift Retort was. We will be discussing that in detail, the causes behind it, India's designs against Pakistan, false flag operations in which Pakistan is obviously, like every single time, targeted and all the fingers pointed towards it without any reason, rhyme or proof whatsoever. Our first segment pertains to Operation Swift Retort, 4 years since this operation showed the world how capable our armed forces are. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns of course, the updates as far as Turkey and Syria are concerned, the relief and rehabilitation process that is going on, and also a lot of questions that emanate, especially from the United Nations. The World Food Programme head David Beasley has highlighted the importance of the aid reaching Syria and Turkey in time, specifically Syria. He says a lot of people are going to be affected if the proper aid does not reach in time, and also he has asked the world to contribute in this aid for the people who've been affected by this dastardly earthquake. The updates as far as this earthquake is concerned will be part of our second story. Then we'll be talking about the soldiers who embraced martyrdom in exchange of fire with terrorists in Spinvam in North Waziristan. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has paid homage to these soldiers. Pakistan and its armed forces continue to defend our nation against any such designs that are perpetrated by outfits such as the TTP or not so friendly countries such as India. Our last story concerns 59 people who've died, including some children, when a wooden sailing boat carrying migrants crashed against the rocks in the southern Italian coast on Sunday, in which Pakistanis have also lost their lives. This is going to be our last story. Let's come and let's begin with our first story, the 4th anniversary of Operation Swift Retort. More in this report.
The 2019 Balakot crisis was a watershed moment in South Asia. The epicenter of the escalation was an attack in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir's Pulwama, in which more than 40 Indian paramilitary soldiers were killed. The staged Pulwama attack was the brainchild of Modi government to rally political support of domestic public for the then upcoming elections by capitalizing on an anti-Pakistan narrative, national revenge sentiment and war hysteria created by misleading media campaign. India resorted to misadventure as its military planes violated the line of control, intruding from the Muzaffarabad sector. The next day, Pakistan Air Force undertook strikes across the LOC from Pakistani airspace to demonstrate our right, will and capability for self-defense. In response to PAF strikes, Indian Air Force crossed the LOC. Pakistan Air Force shot down 2 Indian aircraft inside Pakistani airspace. One of the aircraft fell inside Azad Jammu and Kashmir, while the other fell inside Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and arrested Wing Commander Abhinandan Vartaman. As a peace gesture, Pakistan released Abhinandan within 48 hours of his apprehension, demonstrating that Pakistan is a peace-loving nation. Operation Swift Retort demonstrated that Pakistan has the capability to defend itself against any form of aggression, while retaining the liberty of retaliation at time and place of its own choosing in response to any hostile misadventure.
AVM Ijaz, Malik Saab, who's a senior analyst, joins us on in the studios, in fact, not online. Thank you very much, AVM Saab, to have come all the way to the studios. AVM Saab, 4 years have passed since Operation Swift Retort happened, but we haven't forgotten the bravery of our armed forces and the resilience, as well as the fact that they've shown to the world that Pakistan, in case of any such attempt to attack its territory, can react very swiftly. 4 years down the lane, how do you view India's hegemonic designs?
First of all, let me express my sentiments. Whenever we review or talk about this very historic event of our history, as an air defense veteran, it makes me proud. It gives me immense satisfaction that the readiness state and the operational readiness of our armed forces, and particularly that of Pakistan Air Force, is remarkable. So, having said that, coming to your question, actually in your intro and in the package you have shown, this was basically a misadventure on the part of Indian political leadership. It was a politically motivated so-called surgical strike, which started this entire sequence of or a chain reaction of things which followed from 26th to 27th of February. Our leadership, both political as well as the military leadership, they responded with a very categorical statement that we would respond at a time and place of our choosing. And we had declared the allegedly attack site open to international media, the local media, to go and see for themselves that what was there on ground, which was the so-called airstrike by Indians they damaged. We planned in the form of swift retort, we planned an operation. We sent a strike package which had, once we talk about strike package, just for the consumption of your viewers, it has different aircraft. It has the aircraft which would engage the target on ground. It has escort aircraft of the class of F-16 or JF-17, and then there are elite aircraft, EW platforms, which monitor, and if required, they jam the enemy electronic signatures. And then we have an AEW platform which orchestrates this entire air combat and reacts to the fast changing and very dynamic and fluid situation in the air. Once we saw that there was an Su-30 which was becoming a threat to our strike package, that was engaged. The debris fell well inside Indian illegally occupied Kashmir. So India never, acknowledged our claim. But there are credible sources or neutral sources which can confirm that. And then one of their helicopters, in the hype of the contest for the air superiority, that was shot down by their own troops.
And then they said it was an F-16 that they had shot down.
Yeah, I will come to that. And then there comes this Johnny Abhinandan, Wing Commander Abhinandan. He tries to engage our far superior platforms and far superior the men in the cockpit, and he was shot down. And then what happened is the history, which not only we know, the entire world knows, and vividly remember even today. An Indian claim of having shot down an F-16 was immediately, denied, obviously, by Pakistan, because there were nothing as such. And then, as you know, all airborne platform for the purpose of maintaining their record of flying and for ensuring their reliability and backup spare support, the entire inventory is being monitored by the manufacturer. So just 3-4 days after the incident, after having verified the company which makes and maintains these aircraft, the Lockheed Martin, they denied that Indian claim. Even the embassy in Pakistan, American embassy, they also substantiated the manufacturer's verification. And since then, India never talked about F-16. So actually, as I said, it was a politically motivated misadventure. So this was all the war on media, which had denial of their Su-30 being shot down, claim of having shot down our F-16, and even after we had, as a goodwill gesture, after we had sent back Wing Commander Abhinandan, they having decorated him as if
yes.
he has, yes.
But so why do that when the world knows what the truth of the matter was?
So it was just to maybe again, as you know, and everybody knows, that whatever they cannot achieve on ground with their massive deployment of troops in Kashmir and atrocities on people. They try to negotiate that with their media management. So this is all their fifth generation warfare, having decorated him as if he has done a very gallant act in the air. I mean, if at all he deserved to be shot, to be sent out of the force, because he brought embarrassment to the service and the nation, but they decorated him because they were trying to attribute some claims to him.
Now, AVM Sahib, the fact remains that it was all based on a lie. All right, the whole Pulwama attack and pointing fingers at Pakistan. To date, no proof has ever been sent to Pakistan, despite numerous attempts from the Pakistani side to request Indian side. If you have anything, tell us. But nothing has, no tangible proof has ever been given. We all know about Adil Ahmed Dar, who was arrested and released 6 times from the 2016 to 2018, and then he was pinpointed as the main character behind it with the reference to Pakistan. How was it possible that anybody could smuggle such a huge amount of explosive from Pakistan into India? And that is something that has also been denied by Indian army officers. So what I fail to understand is, despite this media hysteria that was created by India, the political hysteria that was created by the BJP government that resulted in this Operation Bandar, and of course we reacted with the Operation Swift Retort, has the Indian public completely been brainwashed by the BJP into believing whatever it does is right and whatever happens in India is Pakistan's fault, or which is against India?
No, I would not say brainwashed, but actually Indian government, the present government under Mr. Narendra Modi, what they are doing, how they are handling their people. They are handling their people. There are hardcore militants within their ranks. The triple RSS, philosophy that they are following, and they are brainwashed to an extent of taking anybody's life, be it their own citizen or any. Then second are the people who are being coerced, their own people who are being coerced. And thirdly, there is a sizable segment of their population who are being taken head on as far as the atrocities are concerned. And Pakistan bashing, Muslim bashing, and all other minorities, the treatment which they are getting in so-called secular largest democracy in the world, it's a testimony to this fact.
Where AVM Sahib, I'd like to also go towards the ridiculous claims that India made as a result of it. If A denied that they had any of their MiG-21 had been shot, then they claimed shooting down the F-16, which, as you yourself have pointed out, was rejected by the US, Christian Fair, as well as Indian defense experts. And thirdly, of course, the Veer Chakra that was given to Abhinandan. What do you feel is the reaction of the world body post the Pulwama attack, post Operation Swift Retort, as far as Pakistan's defense capabilities are concerned?
Actually, I think Pakistan enjoys a very respectable status as this nuclear power, which shows restraint. Even in this entire episode, on the escalation ladder, Pakistan had chosen to be very selective, very categorical,
very mature,
and very mature. And as you were mentioning, then Pakistan Prime Minister, he also offered that in case there is any intelligence sharing and they have any credible, actionable intelligence, India, it was on this international media that he offered them. Until date, we haven't had any response from Indian side. But Indians, this is not the first time, and unfortunately, I would say this may not be the last time that Indians leadership, they do use such state-managed false flag operations to pursue their political objectives, and at times they create that hype before the elections to create that sentiment, that Pakistan bashing, Pakistan phobia. So these have been the broad contours of their various pre-election campaigns and syndromes.
How important was Pakistan's strategic restraint in 2019 on this very day? The way Pakistan reacted, you talked about Pakistan's maturity, but also the strategic restraint. I'd like you to highlight that, because any other country, if the same had happened to India, India would have instigated war. I can give you a 200%
Exactly.
surety.
It is not only then. If you recall, after that, once there was a missile, launching towards Pakistan, the missile which was being tracked by us. Alhamdulillah, we have in the air defense, we have the capability to track the airborne objects at very far off ranges. So that gave us ample time to respond, but still we exercise restraints, because for us it is very easy to climb up to the escalation ladder, but then where are you going to stop? This region, because we always claim and we always profess as a state policy that after having acquired nuclear capability on both sides, there shouldn't be any war. Although the nuclear thresholds are never declared, but Pakistan has categorically mentioned that there is no space for war, and we have always offered India wholesome composite dialogues.
Because it has always refused.
It is always refused. So there is a very thin margin, and there is a very sensitive point in the entire decision-making loop, and I think we must appreciate our command and control system. We must appreciate our leadership, political as well as the military leadership, which have always with a consensus, which have handled Indians such designs, such misadventures very maturely, and it is very much acknowledged by the international community, because in this region where we are sitting on a flashpoint of Kashmir, nuclear armed, this is the only theater after the nuclear technology post 1945. This is the only theater where two nations are adversaries, and they have contiguous borders as well, and they are nuclear armed. So if we opt to engage ourselves in nuclear exchange, imagine more than almost half of the world population resides in the vicinity of this region, this flashpoint of Kashmir. True. So the nuclear detonation devices, they do not have any geographic borders. It's not only, it will not be restrained to Pakistan.
And all nations that possess nuclear capability need to be extremely responsible. And that is what Pakistan has demonstrated over the years.
Exactly. But the other nations, they do not have such conflicts. They have, post-Cold War, there hasn't been any standoffs among the nuclear powers. This is only a peculiarity of Pakistan, India, where we have a simmering, low intensity conflict in Kashmir, where we are sitting eyeball to eyeball, and then India always opts to pursue the political objectives with these very sensitive weapons.
AVM Ijaz Malik Sahab, also I'd like to have your point of view on the role that the Indian media played creating the war hysteria with Pakistan, because according to the Indian media, both the countries were going to war, versus the Pakistani media that was also acting extremely maturely for once, including the private media. We of course are the state media, so we act as per our responsibility is, but nevertheless the private media overall in Pakistan was also acted extremely maturely and did not let that war hysteria created by the Indian media channels dissipate into the mindset of the Pakistani people. Had the Pakistani media gone in the same vein as the Indian media, do you feel things could have changed a little bit?
Yes, because our public sentiment, because of Indians' continuous troubles that they are creating, and because of their atrocities in Kashmir, there is always an underlying current of anti-India sentiment in the public. And if our media acts as a catalyst to spark those things, things would have been different. And at time, as we have seen in the history where the public opinions had prevailed over maturity of the leadership, because they have to respond to people's aspirations. So I was one of the first few people who were called on the media, being an ex-air officer commanding of the Air Defense Pakistan, and I saw that our anchors, our participants, our panelists, they were very mature, they were very candid, they were very stable, and if we switch over to the Indian channels in between, they were as if,
they were crying horse that it was war between India and Pakistan.
Exactly.
I'd like to ask you my two questions. I'd like short responses. The first concerns the appeasement policy that the world has vis-a-vis India. The last time the world had an appeasement policy, the Second World War happened. We see a lot of appeasement policy as far as India is concerned as well. Whatever it does to its to people in Indian legally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, or to its minority, especially the Muslims or Sikhs or Dalits, a lot of important players turn a blind eye to all of this. Do you feel that the world can continue to ignore the Indian belligerence and this war-mongering attitude that India is perpetrating?
Actually, the appeasement policy of America and the rest of the world who matter in this context of your question, they have two reasons to accept and give a tacit approval or close their eyes towards India. One is China containment policy, and the second is the large economy size of huge Indian market of 1.2 billion. These are the two pivots on which they are prepared to excuse anything that India may think.
But will there be a change in attitude as far as the world is concerned towards
We
India?
wish, but I don't foresee, unless we have a multipolar world where there are other centers of power in the world, particularly the regional power. I would refer to China and Russia. Unless they are able to create a counterbalance in the international response towards such nations, I think this is, in the near future there won't be any change.
Finally, AVM Malik Sahab, I'd like to understand the timing of the Pulwama attack that happened raised many serious questions, because there was a very strong political angle to it. Now that in 2024 there are also going to be local elections in 9 states in India, do you feel, I hope it doesn't happen, but do you feel that Modi could again stake regional peace as he did during the Pulwama attack? Is Pakistan ready?
By the way, it's not only the 9 states, but it is in 2024 they are going to
major
have
elections,
the major election, the Lok Sabha. So, as I mentioned earlier, we have to be very careful. India is such an enemy because they are pursuing their centuries-old, Chanakya's mythology and those doctrines. I think they can do anything because they know that the international community at time would close their eyes, and they always pursue that there is some little space for them to divert the attention of their own people and do some such misadventures. So we do maintain this. Our leadership is cognizant of this fact, and we obviously maintain 24/7 readiness across our LOC and international borders. And inshallah, I can assure through your channel's courtesy to the viewers that Pakistan Air Force particularly, and other armed forces of course in tandem, they are well prepared to safeguard the national interest. The territorial and aerial frontiers of Pakistan would be looked after, and we remain the guardian of the sky.
Inshallah, and our prayers remain with you and our armed forces that are always there to defend our motherland, come what may. Thank you very much, AVM Ijaz Malik Sahab, Senior Analyst, to have joined us to talk to us about the 4th anniversary of Operation Swift Retort, and of course the incidents that bear witness to India's belligerence, jingoism, and the tremendous restraint and responsibility that Pakistan demonstrated there as well. I'd like to end with this statement by the Foreign Office, which says India must remain mindful of the consequences of its reckless conduct and realize that the Pakistani nation remains ready to fully safeguard its sovereignty and territorial integrity, but it is also committed to peaceful coexistence and resolution of long-standing disputes. I hope India and the world are listening. Let's come to our second story, and that concerns the updates as far as the relief and rehabilitation efforts in Turkiye and Syria are concerned. A lot of question marks, a lot of different kinds of points of view are emanating as far as the future of the people who have been affected by these earthquakes is concerned, specifically in Syria. The World Food Programme head has also said a lot of such apprehensions, has shown his apprehensions regarding the people who are in need of aid and the responsibility of the world body to come to the help of the people in Syria and Turkey. More in the following report.
Turkey and Syria are grappling with unprecedented humanitarian disaster as massive earthquake instantly changed tens of thousands of lives, displaced millions and wrecked infrastructure. The number of people killed by the earthquakes that struck Turkey in Syria earlier this month has now passed 50,000. In Turkey alone, 44,218 people died as a result of the earthquake, the country's Disaster and Emergency Management Authority said, while the latest announced death toll in Syria was 5,914. The first earthquake on the 6th of February that hit southeastern Turkey and northern Syria measured a magnitude of 7.7, and a second a little later measured 7.6. The region has since been rocked by more than 9,000 aftershocks. Nearly 240,000 rescue workers, including volunteers, continue to work in the 11 quake-hit provinces in Turkey. Nearly 530,000 people have been evacuated from the disaster area in Turkey alone, and the Turkish government has said that 173,000 buildings have so far been recorded as collapsed or severely damaged, with more than 1.9 million people taking refuge in temporary shelters or hotels and public facilities. David Beasley, who heads the World Food Programme, warned that Syria faces a double disaster as the areas hardest hit by this month's earthquake had already been destroyed in 12 years of unrelenting conflict. As grief sets in, mass trauma and how to respond to it has become another of big challenges for Turkey and Syria.
Now, to discuss more on this, we've been joined by Farhan Ahmed, who is the country director, CESVI, Pakistan. Farhan, thank you very much to have joined us. Farhan, when you look at the different questions that emanate as far as the relief and rehabilitation process in specifically Syria is concerned, and of course the apprehensions raised by David Beasley, how much do you agree with that? Do you feel that the aid bodies, that all the different NGOs that are working diligently in the area are not doing enough?
This is a tough one, by the way, because look, the scale of the disaster is massive, and it's not the disaster that the world has seen in this year. This is maybe the fifth disaster that we have seen in last 6 months, and all five disaster they hit multiple countries. For example, the massive flooding in Pakistan. After that, the massive flooding in Nigeria. Then there is a huge drought in Somalia. Then Syria and Turkey. So I think the issue is also the fatigue of the aid agencies globally. And also the funding, the fatigue of the donors globally. This is I would rather put it like this, that this is a very massive one, and the donors are already engaged. The humanitarian agencies are already engaged in Pakistan, in Nigeria, Somalia, in the Middle East, in Ukraine. So if you see it from that angle, yes, probably the overall response is not as per the expectation. But I would here say, if you see some of the gratitude that is shown by the Pakistanis, whether it's government, whether it's the Pakistani people living in this country or abroad. You might have heard this famous news of a Pakistani man, entering into the DC embassy of Turkey and donating 30
Yes.
million USD. Similarly, from Pakistan, not only the government, the Pakistan Army, the rescue teams, but also organization like Al Khidmat and others. They went there and support the brotherly people there in Turkey. I would rather say in this way.
Or Farhan, 50,000 plus people have lost their lives in both these countries, 44,218 in Turkey and around 5,914 in Syria, as far as the numbers are concerned. Nearly 240,000 rescue workers, including volunteers, continue to work in the Turkey provinces, 11 regions that have been hit in Turkey, and also in Syria. Nearly 530,000 people have been evacuated from disaster areas, and people from 173,000 buildings have so far been recorded as collapsed or severely damaged. 1.9 million people are taking refuge in temporary shelters. The damage is colossal. with the number of the thousands of aftershocks that also happened post this earthquake, and the other major earthquake that happened a few days later as well, has only caused not only trauma in the form of loss of lives, loss of property, but also mental trauma. Do you feel that organizations such as the United Nations and all the other volunteers that are working in these two countries are adept to tackle this?
Well, I mean, again, I will link it with the first question. Look, the overall capacity of the humanitarian agencies, including UN, is overstretched globally because of the climate change, the rapid climate change, the global warming, and this natural events that is happening, simultaneously in multiple areas in Africa, in Asia, and in other part of the globe. So I think the international world has responded, but as you have given the number, all the numbers are astonishing. It's alarming. It's really humongous. Whether when you see it on the table, the number of buildings collapse, the number of people are in refugee and all that. So I will say that this is a very huge calamity. It required a lot of global solidarity with Turkey, and and a continuous effort for years, if not months. I mean, we need to really, as a global citizen, we need to support our Turkish
But
brothers.
Farhan, the fact remains that Pakistan has been at the forefront as far as helping its Turk and Syrian brothers is concerned. The number of teams that went from Pakistan, all the aid that was sent through different aircrafts in these two calamity hit areas is, I think, exemplary for any country across the world. Looking also at the fact that Pakistan itself is bearing a lot of loss because of the floods that hit Pakistan last year. This said, we also remember the video of the Pakistani rescue team when it was returning, how everybody applauded them at the airport. So the resolve is there from the Pakistani side, and the Turkish side understands it and also acknowledges it. It was also acknowledged when our premier went to Turkey. But I'd like to come back to what David Beasley says. He talks about Syria as also. He said this, he describes the situation in Syria as a catastrophe on top of a catastrophe. We know about 12 years of civil war that has been going on in Syria, and then to top it off, we have this earthquake. Although the number of casualties is not as important or as monumental as in Turkey, but the fact that it adds to another problem that Syria is countering, and of course the sanctions that a lot of world bodies have put on Syria. What should now be the world action or the action of global bodies, important countries that have currently sanctioned Syria to help those in need, specifically in Syria?
We have to take the humanitarian imperative beyond anything. The humanitarian imperative should come first, and the world bodies, they have to realize that it's a humanitarian catastrophe, very big one, and we know the condition of the Syria. They have to deal it on the humanitarian grounds. The sanctions in the normal situations, you can argue, you can discuss that, but during these time when the life of the people, a lot of people are on the stake, I think they have to take it from the humanitarian angle. I would say that comparing with Syria, the case of Turkey and Syria, the case of Syria is a little bit complicated also because of the security narrative there in the country. Majority of humanitarian organizations are also reluctant for the safety of their rescue worker and their staff, which is not the case in Turkey. So you might have seen that comparatively a bit more relief workers and humanitarian aid is going towards Turkey than Syria. It is unfortunate, but at the same time, the security of the humanitarian workers and humanitarian organization, including UN body, is also very important for those countries who wanted to send their teams. So yeah, so this is the situation. But again, at the moment, I would say humanitarian imperative should come first. The world should feel the pain of both the countries, the people who are suffering, and react accordingly.
Farhan, the road is going to be very long ahead as far as the rehabilitation of the people who've been devastated by this earthquake in Turkey and in Syria is concerned. David Beasley, I also like to refer to, talked about the Turkish town of Antakya. He said the situation there was apocalyptic, to say the least. Just think of that, imagine that, and it brings a lot of harrowing stories to your mind. How soon, in your point of view, Farhan, can normalcy come to these areas? I'm hearing in northwest Syria, some of the schools have reopened, children are going back, but there's that mental trauma that is constantly in their heads as well. How can those children counter that?
Okay, so I will take you back to the 2005 earthquake in Pakistan. It took us years, and the whole nation responded to that. The whole world responded to that, but still it took us years. And by the way, this is a big catastrophe. So I would say, yeah, the school opening is a very welcoming thing because the children need to go to school also because they need to get out of their trauma and they need some mental health and psychosocial support. Otherwise, they go deep into the trauma, which will live with them for the rest of their life. So it is very important to normalize as much as possible. And during these times, child-friendly spaces and temporary school setups are very, very important. So I think these steps are good. But as you said in the start, the road to recovery would be very long. For Syria, it is going to be years, if not decade. And for Turkey, definitely, as I said, it is going to be taking years.
All right. Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the Turkish president, has said that he's going to reconstruct the homes that have been destroyed all within a year's time. But of course, there's a lot of concern also that safety should be prioritized now that the new buildings are going to be reconstructed. How important is this reconstruction phase also, that a lot of attention needs to be put now to avoid, to construct apartments or buildings or houses that can withstand any such calamity in the future?
I think Turkey has to learn the lesson from countries like Japan and New Zealand. I don't know if you know that 1 week after the Turkish earthquake, there was an earthquake not of that scale, but around 6.6 in New Zealand. But the damages are almost nothing because of the building codes, because of the way they are constructing. I mean, 6.5, 6.6, 6.8 is sort of a normal daily routine in Japan. So I think every disaster brings opportunity as well. And this is a very big disaster, as big as the disaster, as big as the opportunity there. So if you see the premier, what he's selling about the building codes and also some investigation. So I hope that Turkey will learn and will learn from the best practices around the globe. And we have, as I said, we have Japan, we have Singapore, we have New Zealand, three best example in the world who tackle the earthquake in a very, very professional, in a disaster resilient way. So I think this is the time for Turkey because this is not the only big earthquake that jolt Turkey in this decade. I think this is the third. So I think they have to really start from the zero when it's come to the building codes and constructing resilient apartments, building and houses.
What about Syria, Farhan? We understand the civil war and the political situation and security situation makes the whole point of relief, rehabilitation, reconstruction very complicated. This is something you yourself have said. But under this complicated situation, how can the countries across the world help Syria in this reconstruction phase, in this rehabilitation phase?
As I told you in the start that in my professional career of being a humanitarian worker for over 15 years, security. I have seen security as one of the basic ingredient if you want to have proper humanitarian activities from the global partners, relief activities, rehabilitation activities, and development activities, which is not the case at the moment in Syria because of the civil war, as you have said. So, I mean, it is unfortunate, but I believe that all the recovery in Syria will be very difficult and very challenging until and unless there is a sort of a peace deal between the parties there. or the field is enabled for the international humanitarian aid workers and international companies to go and construct and rebuild Syrian infrastructure, because Syrian infrastructure was already collapsed before the disaster, before the earthquake. Now it is further collapsed. So, I mean, the humanitarian organization are there, but they are doing relief efforts, rescue efforts. They probably do some early recovery efforts, but I doubt that organization is going to stay there for longer period, because as soon as things normalize in Syria, the security threat will become high for the other nationalities, and that is the main challenge also for the Syrian reconstruction.
All right. Now, coming back to the United Nations and the World Food Programme, there are different organizations that have made different kinds of donation appeals for the people in Turkey and in Syria. I'd like to refer to what the World Food Programme has appealed. It says that the agency requires 80 million US dollars for emergency relief in Turkey alone. 150 million US dollars are needed to support for 6 months 800,000 people who've been affected in Syria. Another $300 million are required to maintain the food assistance program across all of Syria for 5.5 million people every month. Yeah. Is this target attainable, achievable?
Yes, look, the way WFP planned this whole flash appeal, this is called flash appealing. This is, they are not doing the carpet coverage for the whole population. So they have picked a caseload with the discussion with both the government. So they are probably going to target 30 to 40% of the overall caseload. And it is all depend on the funding. The World Food Programme has the capacity to scale up massively if they have the funding. So again, will they have the funding which they are asking? All the money for 6 months is $1 million question. So if the world would going to support Turkey in a way that they provide
Syria.
them, and Syria, of course, the required funding, then definitely I believe the World Food Programme, along with the cooperating partners, can manage it very quickly and a massive scale, but funding would be the big question in this.
Of course, it's a big question, but it's a very important question that needs to be asked to all the important global bodies that help other countries in need, but they should also be there for Turkey, for Syria, and for all the other countries that undergo such natural calamities and disasters. Thank you so very much, Farhan Ahmed, Country Director of CESVI Pakistan, to have joined us and to have talked to us about the humanitarian aid, the different angles and the question marks around the aid now that the relief, rehabilitation and reconstruction process is about to begin in Turkey. But in Syria, of course, more questions emanate. Let's hope some kind of resolution comes as far as that phase is concerned. Let's come to our last two stories. The first concerns the terrorism that is affecting Pakistan, and there was another incident that happened in Spinwam in North Waziristan. There was an exchange of fire with the terrorists in which the terrorists did lose their lives, but as a result of that there were two soldiers who also lost their lives, who were martyred. Our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has paid homage to these soldiers who have embraced martyrdom. He extended his condolences to the bereaved families and also paid tribute to the security forces for the successful operation against the terrorists. Two terrorists were killed, two others were apprehended during this exchange of fire with security forces in Spinwam. Sepoy Imranullah, Sepoy Afzal Khan fought gallantly and embrace Shahadat. May their souls rest in eternal peace and may their families find solace. This is all. The whole Pakistani nation stands with our armed forces, as I said in our very first part of the show. And thank you to our armed forces who are there to defend our motherland in times of need, just like in these times when there are certain terrorist outfits that are trying to create havoc in Pakistan. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, 49 people have died, including children, in a wooden sailing boat that was carrying migrants and crashed against rocks in the southern Italian coast early on Sunday. Apparently, there are some Pakistanis that are a part of these as well. Migrants from Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, and several other countries were present in this wooden boat that capsized and crashed in stormy weather near Staccato di Cutro, which is this is a resort near the eastern coast. there will be more details that will be emanating, and as soon as these details come, we'll be definitely telling you more about this. Italian President Sergio Mattarella has said many of these migrants came from Afghanistan and Iran, fleeing conditions of great hardship. The Italian Prime Minister Meloni also expressed deep sorrow for the deaths, blaming human traffickers. She vowed to block migrant-free departures to prevent such disasters. Also, the Interior Minister for Italy has said it was essential to stop sea crossings. He said that the migrants need to be offered the illusory mirage of a better life, and that is why they take such steps to cross the borders in Europe. And steps need to be taken to stop such tragedies. This is a tragedy, nevertheless. People's lives are lost, and proper measures need to be undertaken so that not only can the lives be saved, but also such trafficking mechanisms be stopped at the very onset. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you tomorrow, inshallah, with news stories, segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.